Okay, we have begun before the Passover holiday to discuss the next book in the magnum opus of the Rambam that we call Mishnah Torah, the section of Mada called Hilchas Talmud Torah. We're up to the third chapter. We'll start from the beginning of the third chapter. If you remember, the first chapter dealt with the basic laws of who's included in the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, who's not included, and items like that. The second chapter, the Rambam veered off into into the evolution of the yeshiva system, where he discussed how it used to be, and classroom sizes and laws about who's allowed to be a rabbi and who's allowed to teach and who's not allowed to teach. So the education system is what he focused on in the second chapter. And in the third chapter, the Rambam takes another left turn, and this is more of an Agadah. This is more of an Agadah chapter. Like if we were learning Gemara, right? There's halacha and Agadah. This would be more in the Agadah section, because he's going to extol the virtues of learning Torah. And he's going to go on and on and on and basically mimic various chazals, pretty much, many, many Gemaras, as we already mentioned, that the Rambam likes bringing down Gemaras, almost word for word sometimes. And he's going to quote in this chapter many, many sections of Agadah from Shas, as well as many Mishnayos that he takes from Pirkei Avos. Okay, and he starts off by talking about Torah and the beauty of Torah by saying as follows: B'shlosha Ketarim, we're in the chapter 3, halacha 1, halacha Aleph. B'shlosha Ketarim nichtaru Yisrael. Okay, the Jewish people were given 3 crowns: Keter Torah, Keter Kahuna, or Keter Malchus. Okay, Torah, Kahuna, and Malchus. We're going to see that one of them is not like the other 2. So the Rambam explains as follows: Keter Kahuna Zachabo Aaron. When it comes to Kahuna, as the old joke goes, if your father's a Kohen, then you're a Kohen. If your father's not a Kohen, then there's nothing really you could do. No money in the world could ever buy you the Kahuna-ship. All right? That's what we call passed down, and you're either in it or you're not in it. You have really no choice. So that Aaron got, the pasuk says in Pinchas, V'haita lo zara acharav brit kahunat olam. That tells you that's the source that Kahuna emanated from Aaron, the priest. Keter Malchus Zachabodava. When it comes to who is eligible to be the king of Israel, well, we knew that you had to have qualifications. It's called Shevet Yehuda, right? Yehuda had a baby with Tamar, twins, right? Peretz and Zerach. Peretz, if you follow the line and you keep on going down, 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 right? Nachshon, and the last pasuk, I believe, in Rus goes through the whole lineage. David ends up being the 7th or 8th, I forgot, generation after Peretz. So that comes from Yehuda. So you could be the best, most qualified, richest, right? It doesn't matter. If you're not from
Are you sure
Yehuda,
if you count he's not the 10th?
yeah, I could be wrong. Okay. Is that what it is? Okay. I just threw out a number that, okay. I stand corrected, 10th. So the bottom line is he comes from Yehuda, and you could try all you want, but, it's not like Trump that just won a bet and he said, okay, I'm going to try to become president now, right, in 2016. It's not how it works. You have to be from a certain lineage. So what's the punchline of this? And that's what the Rambam says, so poetic. Keter Torah hare munach va'omer umuchan l'chol Yisrael. Keter Torah knows what's the no race, no language, no creed, right? Whatever that expression is, it knows no boundaries. You want to acquire Torah? We don't care where you come from, right? Jewish, Ger, right? I mean, we have certain limitations. A ger can't be from a certain nation, but aside from, the 2% of the world, anybody, right, has the ability to grab the Torah. Very beautiful line. Shenemar Torah tivalanu Moshe, Morasha kihilat Yaakov. The entire congregation of Israel, of Jacob, is a inheritance. Okay, as long as you're Jewish, we don't care if you're from Yehuda, we don't care if you're from Levi, right? Like the Kohanim. As long as we say today, your mother is Jewish, you are Jewish. By the way, that doesn't mean that a non-Jew can't learn Torah. That's a topic that we came across a couple of years ago. We're not going to discuss that. But says the Rambam, Kol mi sheyirtza yavo lito. It is out, right? What's the expression? It's out to be grabbed. Okay? Anyone who wants it can take it, right? But you got to grab the bull by the horns. You got to want it and take it. Shema Tomer Sha'osa Maktarim Gedolim Meketer Torah. So maybe you're going to say, well, if you're one of those lucky people that have let's say if you come from Yehuda, you have not 1 out of 12, even though the other nations, the Shatim don't exist, but let's say you have like a 8% or 10% chance, right? So you're going to say, well, because you got lucky, maybe, I'm greater than a person from Shevet Zvulun, okay, who's a regular, desk clerk, right, working in the factory, right? No. Harehu Omer, Bi Malachim Yimlachu, Beroznim Yechok Tzedek. Pasuk in Mishlei that basically says, by me, kings are reigning, and Malachim are making decrees, and nobles rule. Bi Sarim Yasoru. Okay, it comes from the word Sar, right? Someone in charge, like right, the ruler. Halamad Sheketer Torah Gadol Mishnehen, right? It doesn't, right? It doesn't, right? You don't have to come from a certain tribe. So that's what really the punchline of the Rambam says. Okay, and to prove it, he brings I'm not going to say obscure, but a lesser known, because it comes from a small masechta called Horius that Daf Yomi does in 14 days. Actually, it's 13 days because it starts on 2. So a very small masechta that we only do for 13 days called Horius. At the end of Horius, it talks about precedence. Who gets treated with precedence amongst the Jewish people? So says the Rambam, Amru Chachamim, Mamzer Talmud Chacham Kodim LaKohen Gadol Am Haaretz. So we have like this, maybe let's call it a paradox or this riddle. I have 2 people in front of me, and I want to give one a kibbud in shul. I want to give him an aliyah or her, psicha, hold the Torah, do something. Who's more qualified to get that honor? Someone who's a Talmud Chacham, but unfortunately came from the product of an illegal union, aka Mamzer, but he put that behind him and he became a Talmud Chacham. Or I have a Kohen Gadol. Wow, Kohen Gadol is like the top cheese. But unfortunately, we have a history of having bad Kohen Gadol, as the Gemara in Yuma, I think Daf Tes talks about, where we went through many, many, many Kohen Gadols, right? So you have a Kohen Gadol that's an Am Haaretz. He's an ignoramus. So what are you going to tell me? Do you go after lineage, or do you go after how hard you try? So the answer is, now that we learned the first law, well, you should know that Torah is for everyone. So lineage is not important. You know why it's not important? It's a simple reason. I mean, that's the reason I came up with. You don't have to be, you don't have to go, searching around for answers, is because you don't ask where you're born. You do ask, and it is up to you, the decisions you make in life, and, how hard you try. And as the Gemara in Nida talks about, hishtadlus, right? You can't be held accountable for something that's not in your control. If you put in your hishtadlus and you don't make it, then you can hang your hat at the end of the day and say, you know what, I tried. If you have a Kohen Gadol who's an Am Haaretz, now there may be an exception or two if he has a, learning disability or something beyond his control, but the general assumption is if you're an Am Haaretz, then you just are not interested. So therefore, we don't care where you came from. You could be a prince, like who's right? The royalty in England, right? Right. The two sons. One of them said, "I had enough of this." Right. He lost his malucha. Right. He's out of it. So now he's a regular guy. Right. So it's up to him. He lost his lineage. Right. Lineage doesn't count as much as striving and working out to your best potential. That's what the Rambam says. That's called Keter Torah. It's out there to be had. All right. And the Rambam brings a pasuk, Shenemar Yakarahim Mipninim. Right. This is a very famous pasuk that's inscribed I think in one of the editions of, I think Talmud Shas has this. Yakarahim Mipnimim. It's more precious than pearls. So the word peninim, right? We have that word also in Eshes Chayil, technically means pearls, but the pasuk could be interpreted as Mikohen Gadol Shenichnas Lifnei Lifnim. Yukari, Torah is more valuable than a Kohen that could potentially go. He's a Kohen Gadol. He could go into the Kodesh HaKodshim, which is off limits to everybody on planet Earth, except for one person. But you know what? He didn't do anything to earn it, right? As the E.F. Hutton commercial says, right? You got to make money the old-fashioned way. You got to earn it. So that is that very beautiful Rambam, and in this manner, the Rambam continues and says, "Ein lecha mitzvah b'chol hamitzvos kulan shehi shkula keneged Talmud Torah." If you want to weigh, now we're told that you can't weigh mitzvos. I mean, there's several mishnayos at the end of Chulin and various locations that say don't play judge as to which mitzvah you think is greater. So there are some problems. But in general, the Rambam says, nothing compares to Torah, right? Nothing, there's not one mitzvah that is equal to Talmud Torah. Ela Talmud Torah keneged kol mitzvos. Talmud Torah is keneged everything. Now, we know that tzitzis is compared to all the mitzvos, and Shabbos, and there's, I think, a list of 6 things. Excuse me. Bris Milah is compared to, right? So there's, I think, 5 or 6 items that we compare. Tzedakah, I think, is on that list that we compare to all the mitzvot, but Torah is one of those things that's so important. It's shakol, it's equal to all of the mitzvot. Now, the Rambam gives a reason. She'atalmud meivili de maisa. Because you could give tzedakah and you could wear tzitzis and you could do all these things and be a great guy, right? And say, you know what? I'm just, I'm doing my civics, right? I learned in civics that it's, you have to give charity and you have to whatever. I'll do a mitzvah that I don't understand. But when it comes to Torah, the value of Torah is it's there to instill a certain right a certain way of acting, right? And that's what this is all about, right? Yes, we learn these obscure things that we don't understand, and okay, why do I need to know how many teaspoons make up an ephah that went into a mincha that got burnt, right? We get bogged down a lot of times by technical things, and we're like, what do I need this for? That's a fair question, but without getting into those kind of problems, that overall the overarching method of Torah, and if you had to explain to someone who walks into your yeshiva off the street one day, is that Torah is your guide to life, like a survival guide, right, in the forest. That's what Torah is all about. It gives you, right, it gives you a way to live, and that's what you have to take out of it. You have to use it practically. It's called Me'vili de Maisa. If I learn Gemara all day and I'm a Russia and I'm not nice to people and I beat my wife and I don't pay my taxes and I abscond from responsibilities and I'm a recluse, all your Torah, as they say in Yiddish, meint gunisht, right? It means absolutely nothing. You have to take what you learn into practice. We had this, I think, last parak where the Rambam brought down, remember that Gemara, I think in Kedushin, Daf Mem, I think it is, where there's a debate. What comes first? Is it learning or is it being a good guy? And I think it's Rabbi Akiva that stood up and said, well, chances are you'll learn how to be a mensch, which is what this is all about, the more time you spend learning Torah. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't take civics classes and read, Ben Franklin's books and on how to be a mensch. There definitely are alternatives. Torah isn't the only thing in the world, but in our religion, at least, this is your guidebook. Okay, and we'll do one quick one. Hayalafan of Asiyas Mitzvah Talmud Torah. Let's say you're in yeshiva and you had an opportunity to do a mitzvah, right? You see across the street there's an old man that needs help crossing the street, but you're stuck on Daf Tzadi Beis and Menachos trying to figure out a Tosfos. So you say, I could continue learning, or I could help a person and do a mitzvah. So what do you do? So the answer is, if you could go on your phone and call Bear to help the person cross the street, then you've enabled yourself to get an assist, not a goal, but an assist at least, in doing the mitzvah, and you didn't break up your learning. But if Bear is in camp, right, and he didn't come home early, then you have an obligation, and this is very, very important, you have an obligation to stop what you're doing, okay, and do the mitzvah. Again, what does it show? It shows that we're not here to grind our head into technicalities and just be bogged down by Talmud Torah. It all has to be applicable. You have to take it and you have to channel what you learn into practical, everyday mitzvahs. I guess we'll stop here.